Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football. Lincoln Riley, this USC program close out the 2025 class in my opinion, a really effective manner. And many of y'all know what time it is now. It's time to take a step back and look at this 2025 class as a whole. Talk about our favorite parts of the 2025 class. Talk about some positions that probably need to be addressed in the 2026 cycle. I will start with this: the buzz that USC is creating, the front office hires that they have made the last couple of weeks. You are going to see USC, at my personal opinion, just take that step in the right direction on the recruiting trail over the next couple of months. But that is not to diminish some of the players that you have coming into the 2025 cycle. And it's obviously headlined by some really big names, right? Five-star quarterback Hassan Longstreet, Jakeem Stewart on the defensive line. We're going to talk about some of those players, but there are some other parts of this class that really stand out. Want to get into some of those. We've spent so much time breaking down each individual commitment. Sometimes we don't take that step back and look at the class as a whole. That's what we're going to do today. Before we get into it, as always, the USC fans, of which the amount of support y'all show the fellas as we talk the recruiting trail has been amazing. Can't thank you guys enough. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Appreciate you guys. Without further ado, let's get into what I think is the best part of this 2025 class. And I'm going to scroll down to the offensive line. You land two blue chip offensive tackles, both of which are considered top 20 offensive tackles in the 2025 cycle. This is huge. And you look back at USC the last couple of years, it just was not good enough on the recruiting trail, specifically at that offensive tackle spot. And it's arguably the most important position to get right on the recruiting trail. You look at all the best offensive lines that you see in college football, there's one thing that they kind of all have in common, and that is they recruit the high school ranks and they get developed within the program. I look at USC and say, hey, you landed two of the best tackles. And we all know how hard it is to get starting caliber offensive tackles in the transfer portal, which means you dang well better get them on the high school ranks. Both Alex Payne and Aaron Dunn, although probably need a little bit of development, although probably are not guys that you see on the football field as true freshmen, both have exceptional developmental upside. Getting these guys locked in on the offensive line, to me, is the best part of this class. I mean, some of your best commitments in the 2025 class are coming at the most important positions, right? Quarterback, offensive line. That's what I love most about what USC did in the 2025 class. Now, the most slept on part of the class, I'm going to go to the defensive line. And it's I'm going to say why it's slept on is, look, everybody wants to talk about Jakeem Stewart. And y'all know I'm a fan of Jakeem Stewart. Not enough people are talking about Floyd Buchard and Cash Jacobson. Many of the USC fans who've been rocking with the fellas for a while know I am sky high on what Floyd Buchard can be as a defensive lineman over the next couple of years. And I think he's coming into, a really good situation where you look at, we can pull up the depth chart for USC right here. You look at you look at the depth of the defensive line. And this is something we've talked about a lot during the offseason. This defensive line in 2024 was probably the weakest unit on this USC team. I don't think it's crazy to say it's going to be the strength of this USC team in 2025. Headlined by transfer portal additions, Keyshawn Silver, Jamal Jarrett, Jakeem Stewart coming in, Carlin Jones, G.J. Abasiri going into year two. Devin Tompkins took a massive step in 2024. That's all to say that you have a guy in Floyd Buchard coming in who probably needs a year of just development as a football player. He doesn't need to play. We don't need to throw him on the football field in 2025 like you kind of had to do with the guy like G.J. Abasiri last year. You give him that redshirt year that I think is going to be really beneficial for him. The ceiling with Floyd Buchard, who grew up in Canada, was new to the sport of football, moves down to the United States, really just takes over the high school ranks his last 2 years. This kid, given time, is going to be really, really good football player for USC, and he's coming into a really good environment. And that's kind of where I'm trying to emphasize as I look at it and say, Floyd Buchard, Cash Jacobson probably need a year of development, but nobody's talking about him because everyone wants to talk about Jakeem Stewart. I think he got a couple of really, really intriguing defensive linemen coming in with Jakeem Stewart. Day one impacts. You have to start. You have to start with Hassan Longstreet. And let's get into this conversation, right? Do we think Hassan Longstreet starts as a true freshman for USC? I think there's a very good chance he does. You look at Hassan Longstreet and say that the ceiling is incredibly high. There were some inconsistencies at times with him at high school, but you know that I think the thing that stands out to me the most is you're getting back to the quarterbacks that have historically had success with Lincoln Riley. You look at and it's not a shot at Jaden very well might start for USC in 2025. And we're going to talk about this more as spring practice and fall camp get on their way. But Miller Moss and Jaden, those are not the prototypical quarterbacks that Lincoln Riley has had running his offense. You look at the guys who've had the most success. You think of a guy like Baker. You think of a guy like Caleb or Kyler Murray, guys who are really, really good athletes that know how to extend plays, get outside the pocket, make all the throws off platform. That's what Hassan Longstreet brings. He is a juiced up athlete that knows how to be creative and kind of make nothing something, so to speak. A guy like Miller Moss didn't have that ability. Now, what needs to happen with Hassan Longstreet is the consistency. We all see just the draw dropping throws that this kid can make. There's a lot of talent in that arm. Now you just got to be a little bit more consistent of a decision maker and a little bit more consistent of a passer. What better what better coach, I should say, than Lincoln Riley to get that out of Hassan Longstreet? And at the end of the day, at the quarterback position, I look at it and say, look, there's a lot of traits in this USC quarterback room. Hassan Longstreet and Jaden. And now you got a couple of guys that offer a really high upside. You feel like Lincoln Riley is going to get at least one of them ready to rock and roll in 2025 and give you that upside. Number 4, biggest needs in 2026. I'll probably go to the wide receiver room and just say I don't dislike the wide receivers coming in, because you look at Romaro Eisen and say, look, really, really electric with the football in his hands. You look at Tanick Hines, legitimate burners. Corey Sims, that big-bodied wide receiver that can be a handful for defensive backs. It's not me being super down on these wide receivers. What I look at and say, this is one of the best offenses historically in the country. Under Lincoln Riley, it's going to be one of the best offenses in the country, however long Lincoln Riley's there. I think USC should be able to attract some legitimate difference makers in the wide receiver room. Like when the passing attack is going to be good, when the quarterback play is going to be good, when you're going to be on an offense that produces the way historically Lincoln Riley offenses have, I think the pull with wide receivers should be a little bit stronger. Because you look at you look at Jeremiah Smith or look at Ryan Williams for Alabama, I think USC can pull those kind of guys. Can they do that in the 2026 class, especially with guys like Jacoby Lane and Mekhi Lemon maybe being to the NFL after this year? You want to replenish those difference makers in the wide receiver room. That's probably the biggest thing I would fix in this 2025 cycle. You kind of hope they address going into 2026. We'll close it out there. Appreciate you guys rocking with it, tying a nice little bow on the 2025 class as we get going towards that 2026 cycle. Appreciate y'all rocking with it. If you guys do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. We'll talk to y'all later. Peace.